Welcome back to the Anxiety and Free podcast. It has been about 3 weeks since I recorded an episode and I really missed it. Okay. I'm just going to be honest. If you have been keeping up with the previous episodes in this season, season two, we have been talking about the ways in which I would address certain diagnoses in therapy. And if you're also picking up on a theme, I don't focus so much on the diagnosis. I'm in private practice for myself. I do not accept insurance, so I am not forced to diagnose anyone, although we do talk about specific diagnoses if people want that. However, I just find a lot of joy in helping people navigate just the randomness in life. And maybe that randomness brings about some anxiety or depression. Maybe that randomness triggers some of the bipolar symptoms for people. Maybe that randomness triggers OCD, like for myself. And whatever that is, that's my sweet spot. That's what I like to do. So I thought with my first episode coming back, as I took this little break, I would be a little more vulnerable with you all. And that also means I'm going to be doing very minimal editing on this episode. My family is still in the midst of a big transition. So I just don't have the time to try to perfect things for y'all. So I hope that's okay. Okay. I'm trying to be less perfect in this stage of life. So if you've been following, you know that I was living in Tampa, Florida. Now my family is living somewhere in Maine. And a lot of people have been shocked when they heard that. Certainly friends and colleagues have. And I'm still shocked. Just driving around, like my kids started school today, driving around, I think, oh my goodness, we're really in Maine. This is really where we live now. And I would have never picked Maine out on the map. You know, we're in the northernmost state in the United States. And so I just wouldn't have picked it. I would have picked Texas. I would have even been open to going back home to Louisiana or living in Maryland, where my husband's family lives. And here we are in Maine. So, anyways, I thought it would be very cool if I just do an episode to talk about people in transition and how I address that using myself as the example today, okay? Because I've been through a lot of transition. So, if you know me personally, you're probably going to hear some things you haven't heard because over the last 5 months, I have taken a lot of time to really reflect on what I want my life to look like, how I want to reestablish myself, and ultimately how much privacy I wanted moving forward. And I have been very private. So a lot of my family members found out that we moved to Maine online, and that wasn't because I was trying to hide anything. It just happened that way. You know, we're here and I'm like, okay, finally we're out of that tunnel of moving. So anyhow, first I'm going to share a little bit about the story. And so I posted about this on Facebook. My husband was laid off from his job, and it was more so the company said they were doing a reorganization. And he ended up being subject to that reorganization. So he spent 5 months out of work. Now, we could say we were upset, we could say we were mad. We were none of that. You know, it was more so everything happens in God's timing. God always has a plan, and we don't know how long you're going to be out of work for, but let's make the most of it. So, we spent a lot of time just nurturing our marriage and our personal relationship, nurturing our children. You know, he got to spend a lot more time with us and actually go to the grocery store with us, which is something that just wasn't happening because he was working all day and then he'd come home and he just kind of take over so I can manage things with the kids. So we spent a lot of time together as a family, and that was beautiful. Now, that's the upside of it, right? The upside is that, oh, you get closer, you spend more time together. Maybe you have time for reflection, more time for prayer, and really waiting to see what God has for you and what He's trying to speak to you. The challenging part is that my anxiety started to creep up. And if you know me personally, or if you've heard me speak professionally, I have a whole course on anxiety, y'all. My podcast is based off this idea that you can live with mental illness, mental challenges, and still have a life of freedom. That is why I named this Anxiety and Free. I have an anxiety diagnosis, generalized anxiety disorder to be specific. And so over the last 4 or 5 years, really in the last 2 years, I've perfected my own model. So that's what my course is created off of. And I was working my model, okay? So when I tell you anxiety will creep up on you, it happens to the best of us, even us seasoned professionals. And I didn't really start experiencing it or understanding it rather until it was months later because I just thought, oh, I'm struggling to sleep because I always struggle to sleep. I always go to bed late, right? I don't have good sleep hygiene. I'm working on that now that we're in Maine. It's just something about this air here. Something about Maine, y'all. You might want to check it out. They really do boast a simpler form of living here. And even on the state sign, it says Maine, the way life should be. And that really stood out to me when we came to visit before we moved here. And I just thought, oh, let's see what they're talking about in Maine. And so everyone is just so relaxed, so chill. I haven't gone to a place where people haven't just, for lack of a better word, talked my ear off. Like, "Hey, how are you today? Find me when you come back to this store." It's different. The sun hits different. The mood hits different. So I am enjoying so far life in Maine. And before getting here is when I really started to recognize, okay, my anxiety is creeping up. I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to be very vulnerable with you right now. About 6 weeks ago, 6 to 8 weeks ago, I had a panic attack. I hadn't had a panic attack in a decade. I kid you not. I remember the last time I had a panic attack. We were living in Massachusetts. I was working in Rhode Island and I was traveling to this island for work, Newport, Middletown, Rhode Island. And that was the last time I had a panic attack. It was snowing and it happened. It just caught me off guard. Well, actually, that morning it had been building up. This one caught me off guard 6 to 8 weeks ago. And just like the book says, it was textbook. It peaked in 2 minutes. And because I am who I am, I just knew this is what's going on, right? This is the part that's almost embarrassing, but I know it's not embarrassing. Okay. I'm being vulnerable right now. My kids were in the car. My husband was driving. We were headed to get some food. So everyone experienced this. Luckily, we had just left Whole Foods. So I had two cold bottles of water. I mean, they were so cold. And I had gotten some food off the buffet for myself. I couldn't even eat it, right? It was just sitting on the floor somewhere. But I was taking these deep breaths. I knew to breathe my way through it. I was telling myself in my head, Kita, you're okay. You're going to make it through this. You know what this is. It's going to peak. Let it pass. Okay. It passed. And then I had to rethink some things. And I had to ask myself, what are you suppressing right now? What what have you been suppressing for that to just catch up with you like that? And the reality is I kept checking in with myself over these last 5 months. This happened 8 weeks ago, so 2 months. I kept checking in with myself, but there were certain things that I just wasn't really able to hone in on because life was busy. We were trying to figure out where we're moving to. Each time my husband had an interview with a job in a new state, I was researching. Our kids were going through this transition. They were understanding, okay, we're not going back to our school most likely. So what does this look like? I think I was managing everybody's everything around me and I wasn't focusing so much on myself. So if you're listening to this and that's you and you tend to pour into other people in a similar way that I do, then I want you to really hear me on this. We do have to pause and say, am I okay? And it's not good enough to be surface level. Am I okay? And okay, let me pour more into other people. We really have to sit with ourselves. And sometimes, right? Because I don't think I was trying to dismiss myself. I was in therapy. I was still trying to exercise as much as I could. I was still seeing clients through this. I was still checking in with me. I had friends checking in with me. Sometimes it's just going to happen even if you're practicing all the skills, right? So we got to pay attention to that though. Like really give yourself some grace. You're doing a good job. Okay. So that's the story. So now I have my notes here because I have to pick up my kids from their new school soon. I mentioned it's their first day. I want to just walk you through these notes of how I've addressed things with myself and how I would address them with a client in transition. So one, you just heard my story. So if I'm meeting with a client, I want to hear what's going on. Tell me the good, the bad, the ugly. Tell me what you've done to alleviate your symptoms if you're presenting with symptoms, right? And once we really do that, once I hear the story, I'm assessing the mental health. Is there anxiety? Are there symptoms that can be tied to a certain diagnosis? Are you having reoccurrence of something you had gotten past already? Because maybe you had seasons of depression in your past like myself and you just knew like, okay, it's creeping back up there because of this transition. I will say for me, because I have a history of depression, that was one thing in hindsight I was on top of that, y'all. Because I mentioned I went to therapy, I was doing my deep breathing, I was taking care of myself, right? It really was a lot. Like, I'm not going to share how much went down in this transition because that would be a 2-hour podcast. And I don't want everybody in my business like that. I know family and friends are going to listen to this. Some people know, most people don't, right? It was a lot. And one thing I was keenly aware of was the fact that, Keita, you have a history of depression. So one thing you better not do is let a whole bunch of people in your business. I would say that again, but I don't want to be one of those people who repeat things like 3 or 4 times in one episode. Seriously, though, if you're going through something deep, try to keep that information between you and your therapist and maybe you and 1 or 2 trusted people. I have mine. I won't mention who they are. You can imagine that my husband's one of them, though, and my therapist was one of them. So that implies that there's a third or fourth, right? I have several people that I really trust with my business. Okay. However, I knew that if I shared what was going on with a ton of people, that a ton of people would be coming to me for updates. And I knew I couldn't handle that. I knew I couldn't handle everyone saying, what's the status update? Did he find a new job yet? Does he have any leads? What's going on with you? How are the kids handling it? I even just saying that right now, I'm getting tension in my shoulder. So that ought to tell you why I decided to stay so private in this season because I just knew anything can trigger depression and anxiety. So I just felt like I needed to keep things close to the belt, tell as few people as possible because Keita, you don't want anything activated that you've already survived. So maybe that's a message for someone. I don't know. You could tell me in the comment section. So we've addressed the symptoms. We've gotten an understanding of how these current life circumstances, this huge transition is impacting you, and or in this case, how it was impacting me. What if things aren't changing soon? I mentioned that my husband was out of a job for 5 months. And he was working his butt off, by the way, networking, interviewing, talking to people, connecting with mentors. So it's not like he was just sitting at home watching TV. He was doing the work, right? What if things aren't changing soon, though? Especially in this economy, if you've been out of work, you don't know when you're going to be back to work. And when I think about all of the YouTube videos I've watched where people have talked about their journey, I've heard from nurses and engineers, not heard from, but watch their videos and they're saying, oh, I've been out of work for 9 months and I'm overqualified. We're in that kind of market. So we didn't know. So one thing I wouldn't do with someone as a therapist is say, oh, let's do all these things. I'm going to give you a whole treatment plan and then you're just going to get better. Well, what if the circumstances aren't changing soon? We have to make room for that. So I really keyed in on these three things for myself. Well, four actually. One, I already told you. One, self-regulation skills. That was important to me. I mentioned my deep breathing, exercise. There were weeks where I didn't exercise. I had no energy for it. And then there were weeks where I got back in my program and I was on top of things. I was talking to trusted people. I was making my emotions known to my husband and he handled them so delicately and I was supporting him as well, right? But that self-regulation was key. The second thing was managing my thoughts. Cognitive behavioral therapy will help you out with that. Because when I had negative thoughts come in, like, oh, what if it's a year? What if it's like these other people, right? You can have so many thoughts. What if it never works again? Okay, your brain's going to go to the worst case scenario. It's your job to say, that's not the case. This man is overqualified for everything he's applied for. Or you're overqualified for everything you've applied for. It's going to happen. So I use CBT to address my negative thoughts. I explored my own boundaries, and that one kind of ties into the fourth one, which was the need for privacy. But what are my boundaries in this season? What do I need to say yes to? What do I need to say no to? In what areas could I be a little more private? And I've talked about that a little bit. I needed to protect my psyche. I needed to protect myself from people's opinions. We've moved 5 times, okay? Again, in 14 years of marriage. So over the years, when I would tell people, Marcus is looking at jobs again, or, he's got to, go to something else so he can progress in his career. People have all of these opinions that they want to give you. This time, I told myself, you're not going to hear anyone's opinions unless you tell them intentionally. You tell someone intentionally for their opinion. And sometimes you might tell someone close to you and you might have to tell them, I'm not looking for feedback. I'm just sharing. And I had to do that. I had to do that with people I trusted. Hey, I'm just sharing this with you by way of an update or just because I'm just letting it out because I feel safe with you. And I'm not looking for opinions. So please don't rack your brain trying to give me one. And that was my nice way of saying, please keep your opinions to yourself because I can't handle it. I don't want it. Not because I don't respect the person or trust them. It's just sometimes you need to have a boundary in that area and protect yourself. So those were those four things. And then explore the priority list. For me, I have a personal and professional priority list, and they don't always overlap. Even now, I'm still trying to navigate the business registration stuff here in Maine. I won't even go there, y'all. It's a lot. Just deep breath, deep breath. Just my shoulders started aching just saying it. I have done hours of research to make sure my business is registered properly in Maine. My business is considered a corporation, not considered, it is considered an S Corp. So if you're not self-employed, maybe just doing a DBA or a fictitious name, and your business is registered as an S or C corp with the IRS, you're going to have to jump through additional hoops when you move to a new state. It's fun. It's fun paying all these additional taxes. I'm blessed to be able to pay taxes because here's my reframe, because that means business is good, things are growing, right? This is a business that I own and it's like my third baby. I protect this business. So there's that. Anyhow, there's a lot on those priority lists for the business and professional. Which one are you tackling first? I decided no matter what, you can do your research for the business piece. Kids come first. Family comes first. That's your priority always, right? God first. Obviously, I'm a Christian. Staying connected with Him has helped me through all of this. What I'm telling you is that a priority list is so important because your brain is going to be bouncing around to so many different priorities and tasks. You really need to have that organized. So for me, at the end of the day, I value family so much that I said family's coming first. And I will do some research on the side. However, the business has to come second, and it has. I'm just now getting around to doing more of the things I need to do. But as far as paying myself, honey, that's taken care of now. I've gotten my first main paycheck, okay? Because I'm an employee of the business. Anyhow, make a plan to tackle that list. That's important. This is something you can do with a therapist, right? Because sometimes when that depression or anxiety is creeping in, I don't even have time to tell you about some of the OCD symptoms that tried to surface. I'm okay. All right. I know all the skills. So I recognized it. As soon as it showed up, I was like, oh, okay, you're OCD. You trying to wear jeans today. Last time you wore a dress, but I recognize you no matter what you wear. So I'm going to attack you with CBT. I'm going to make sure my thoughts don't latch onto those things obsessively. So that might be a whole separate segment of another episode. However, making your plan to tackle it could be done in a very safe way with a psychotherapist you trust. And how I would handle this with a client is just asking what feels overwhelming to think about, to talk about. Give me that thing and let me help you strategize around it. Let me help you navigate it more safely so you can protect your mental health and your peace. Then, of course, we're doing check ins, as the person's meeting with me. I have several clients, by the way, who have also been in major transitions. So that's been interesting. Unless they hear this podcast, they will not know that I've also been in a major transition. Most of them know I moved states because that requires rescheduling people. However, just how deep it goes, this is the most they would probably hear. So I was having to support other people while also going through this and navigating this transition in the way that I'm sharing with you today, all while supporting clients. And it was a nice reprieve from my own stuff, to be honest with you. Sometimes I would take my own advice. Sometimes clients would tell me things that they're doing that we hadn't talked about in therapy. And I'm like, that's a great idea. Yeah, you keep doing that. That's working for you. And then I get out of the session and be like, I'm going to try that. So yeah, I still manage to support other people. And then the other thing I'll say is that medication, you might consider medication, especially if the anxiety, depression, or whatever other symptoms, OCD, bipolar disorder, if they're creeping up for you and they're getting to a point where you can't handle them and it no longer feels mild, it feels moderate to severe, then it's okay for you to go seek a medication consultation. It's okay for you to ask for help in that way. And a good psychotherapist would be encouraging you to do that if that is something that you're open to. Last but not least, I, of course, am so grateful to God, my guiding star. I have a very close relationship with God, and without that relationship, I would not be where I'm at today. I don't know. I think I would have gotten depressed if I had not have continued to pray and develop my relationship with God. So I'm so grateful for that. If you're someone who's listening and you have a belief system, I encourage you to lean into it. If you're someone who says, I don't have a belief system, but doggone it, maybe I need one moving forward to navigate this transition, look into it. Maybe you have friends that attend certain churches or organizations that they really find spiritual support with. And maybe you're a person listening who is not religious at all or not spiritual at all, and you don't feel anchored in that way, and you don't care to feel anchored in that way. I want you to know that this podcast space, this podcast community is still safe for you. I welcome people from all walks of life. So that's this episode. If you are in transition, I hope you found it helpful. If there's any feedback you have, any comments, if you relate to my story in any kind of way, please let me know in the comment section, because sometimes it just feels like you're watching other people's videos and they're going through transition and you're going through it and you relate, but you don't know them. I promise you, I will offer a very personal response if you comment in the comment section. So subscribe to this podcast, follow it wherever you're listening, and share it with a friend. You never know how many people in your space or on your timeline or even at your job are going through some sort of transition, even if it's not job loss. People go through so many types of transitions. So please take care of yourselves, and I'll see you on the next episode. The Anxiety and Free podcast is sponsored by Find My Therapist, connecting you with therapists at findmytherapist.us. If you found today's episode helpful, please share it with someone who might need it. Tune in next week for more conversations on navigating mental health and finding your freedom.